Okay,
All
well,
right.
I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. And it seems like our presenter may have been delayed. So I think Katie and I right now will chat a little about employment. And Katie, why don't you tell us a little about maybe what you have done academically, and if that prepared you for your career, and have you changed what you've worked on?
Great question, Lori. So, yes, I attended college after high
Hello.
school. And
Okay.
you're unmuted, Lori.
Okay,
Attended.
hold on. I'm sorry. Hold on one second.
Sorry, everyone. I went to a public high school in my hometown. As someone who's blind, went to public school all of my life, and then attended a four-year college after high school, where I received a bachelor's degree in communications. And after receiving my degree, I have had a range of experiences and had a kind of a broad career path, everything from working for the federal government to working in the nonprofit space, as I currently do with the American Printing House for the Blind as part of our APH Connect Center, working with my colleague Lori. So it definitely, I think for me, when I was in college, getting my degree, when I first started out in the field of communications, I thought I wanted to go into radio broadcasting. And then one of my professors actually had brought in a radio broadcaster to class, and that individual at the time, this was in the early 2000s. And so radio, commercial, radio was kind of changing, and the local radio stations were then starting to become kind of a thing of the past. And so stuck with communications and ended up getting more of a general communications degree than specifying in something like broadcasting or public relations. I think we might still be trying to work out some of our technical issues. Any update, Lori?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Jeff can't get in. So he's saying he's gonna try to get in on his phone.
Okay, if he needs me to send him the invite link, I can.
Katie said she can send you the invite link if you want. Okay, not a problem. Yep, bye. He said yes, please send it.
All right.
Okay, well, we're going to
Sending
switch
that.
gears, but now we're going to interview Katie for future career connections, because that was interesting. And I think it's important for people to understand that sometimes we go to school for something, or sometimes we get through school and we begin working, and then we realize maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be. So we're just going to wait a few minutes here. I'm sorry, guys, to keep you waiting. But Jeff was not able to get in through the link. So Katie, while we're waiting, maybe you could tell us a little about, originally you said you thought you really wanted to work in radio. What made you make some changes? Was it not what you thought it was, or?
Yeah, I think I just saw that it was it was changing in a way that I didn't think would be a feasible, and in terms of a career. It was, the communications person who came to one of our classes to speak about it was saying that it was becoming part-time for people going into the field. It was just kind of hard to get work and find work. So that actually kind of got me thinking, well, okay, maybe I want to look at some other options, but I was already mostly through my communications courses. So wanted to stay in that space. And I really do think that the communications degree gave me a broad coursework to then take that degree and apply it to other positions that I've had throughout my career.
And so your general communications degree that you received really focused more broadly on other areas within the communications field. And
Yes, so it was called communication studies. And so it really, I took some courses in a lot of like organizational communications, for example. So, how communication works within companies and within teams. And I took some courses on politics and communications and gender and communications, and just a wide variety of courses in that arena.
Mhm.
And I hear that Jeff Bishop has joined the meeting.
I'm sorry,
Well, that's
everyone.
good because I didn't because I have no
Yes.
speech on.
I am so
Welcome,
sorry,
Jeff.
everyone.
Oh, you're fine. You made it. The tech gremlins,
Yeah.
we all know about those. So.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears. Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about your job at Microsoft, maybe in 2 minutes, what a program manager does
Sure.
and where it kind of fits into a team within the field of technology.
Sure. So I'm a product manager at Microsoft. I work on the Windows accessibility team, and I work on Narrator, the screen reader that's built into Windows. And we really are, I specifically work in an area of assistive technology, and I work alongside other product managers and software engineers and designers and user researchers and all kinds of different people across the industry, really. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to, when I decided to come to work for Microsoft, one of the goals, people were like, wow, you're much older in your career. You're like, why you're taking a big risk to do this? And the big core reason why I wanted to do it was because I wanted to make a difference. And it's just amazingly fun to be able to work at such a great company.
And so I assume you've been working on Narrator basically from like the ground up?
Well, let's see. So, Narrator has a really long history within the field. And I started working on Narrator in 2017 here at Microsoft. Now, before, I actually used to work at Microsoft back in the 90s and actually worked on the Office side of Microsoft, doing support for Microsoft Access. We might want to talk a little bit about that, but that was back in the days of Windows 3.1 for workgroups, and screen reader technology was very, very new at that time as far as Windows was concerned. So it was quite challenging actually in that environment. So we had to utilize lots of resources and tools and technology to be able to adapt the environment to be able to meet the needs of me being able to work effectively in that role. But I've been working on Narrator since about July of 2017.
Exciting. And so as a user of somebody who would depend on Narrator because of being blind or low vision, do you feel that adds to your ability to maybe push a project forward compared to if you weren't visually impaired? Or do you feel you can relate differently when working on a project?
Yeah, I think it brings the ability of really having that lived user experience to a product,
Mhm,
so which is great because being a screen reader user myself, I'm able to understand what the needs of a screen reader user are. But we also rely on people across the industry, and we listen to feedback from customers. We have a narrator advisory board that's really pivotal in providing us feedback. But yes, I think, being a screen reader user myself has allowed me to, truly represent this in a way that, truly does have the user experience in mind and the true lived experience in mind.
mhm. And now in your role, do you manage people or just the project?
I manage product,
Okay,
so I don't manage people. No,
that's
I have told people I do not want to manage people. I want to manage technology, and that's really what it's all about for me. I'm not really into managing people.
Mhm,
There's great managers in the world that do that, including mine. So I'll let her do that.
mhm,
It's not something I have done it in the past, but it's I'd rather do all the fun stuff. Not that
mhm.
managing people is not fun. I'm just saying I think it's a lot. I enjoy my job a lot more when I'm actually working with developers, working with other product managers, and
Mhm.
talking to customers.
And in that type of work as a program manager, what would you say is an essential part of being a team player?
Wow. Well, I think the first thing is to listen. I think one of the most important skills in any role is to really listen and learn. Always have a continual mindset of learning. Be willing to adapt. Be very adaptable and efficient. In fact, I was speaking to some students earlier today here at Microsoft, and told them, I said, the best thing that you can do in your career is to make sure that you have as much knowledge of all of your tools that you possibly can. So we were talking about, uh, they were visiting our inclusive lab, and we were talking about narrator, and they were telling me that they were JAWS and NVDA users, and I said, listen,
Mhm.
we
So were
just
these blind students?
yes, these are blind students, yeah.
Okay.
And
And can you just tell us what the inclusive lab is,
yeah, the
if you're
inclusive lab,
allowed
yeah,
to share that?
yeah, there's this really great lab, and if you ever make your way over to Seattle, you should try and see if you can get in there. They'll do tours and things. But basically, this inclusive lab is basically this environment where we showcase accessibility solutions, in with product. And
Mhm,
it's it's really neat. Everything from sensory, disabilities to, you know, uh, uh, blind low vision to, mobility disabilities, all kinds of things, is represented there. And so we had students here from the Washington School for the Blind, and they came in, and they had a number of us here at Microsoft who are blind to talk to them. And we were just sort of emphasizing the need of, hey, doesn't matter what screen reader you're using. And in fact, we encourage you really to know all three if possible. And these are pretty young kids, so
mhm.
you know they're pretty adaptable, and they're not like us old fogies, where it takes a little
Yes, I
bit
know.
longer takes a little bit longer to pick up on things. But it's one of those situations where they ate it up. They understood that if you
Mhm,
really want to be successful, have as many tools in your tool belt to allow you to be efficient in whatever role you choose to do. And that goes for everybody, whether you're a student, you you're at home, work, or play, it doesn't matter. To have as many tools in your tool belt to allow you to be successful. Another thing about being successful as a product manager, or really a successful at any role, really, is to have a growth mindset. Don't worry to make a mistake. Everybody is going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from those mistakes. It's how you encompass that learning. We often say here at Microsoft, it's okay to fail fast. We would rather you fail fast and learn from it so that you can innovate faster, and that's something that's true for everyone, really, I think, and having that true growth mindset.
And it's true in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Everybody does.
Everybody.
It's okay as long as you learn from them.
Yes. And everybody's interdependent. So it's
That's right.
important to remember these type of things.
Yeah. If we were perfect, we wouldn't be here on Earth, right? God would take us home. So there you go.
So what do you see as a challenge for you in a work setting? And I don't mean necessarily at Microsoft. You could, if you chose to speak
No, I think
about something
this is an interesting question.
in the past.
I think that one of the biggest challenges, and this goes for any career really, or any job, is to make sure that you have a good team to support you. We know that there's going to be times when you run into an inaccessible website, or I mean, look at the WebAIM results, right? We know that 97% of websites out there have accessibility issues. And so whether it's a tool that's in-house, or whether it's whatever the case may be, we know that hey, screen readers do really great jobs, but sometimes we just need someone to come look at something on a screen, or it's not readable, or technology breaks, right?
Yep.
And so it's really important that you have a foundation of a great team around you that is willing to assist when possible. And by the way, that it's not just about you being blind, though, too. That those team members are going to need your assistance too. So it's all about just being a support to one another, and having a safe place to be able to say, hey, can I get some help? It's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's better to ask for help than struggle for a few hours. Than, you know what I mean? You also need to be efficient in your role. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, I work at Microsoft, and there are still days where I'll run into something, and we're putting a new version of Windows on a machine or something, and things don't boot up quite right. Well, I'm going to have to get someone to come look at the screen, because no screen reader's running yet. So that kind of thing. A narrator is not running because for whatever reason, there's something wrong. So it's okay in those circumstances. I think that's the biggest thing, is to have that great support system. I always like to tell people, there's no I in team. You're a member of the team too, and you're going to help them too. So as long as you have a great team, I think anyone can be really successful. It's all about how you nurture a team environment and foster it.
Okay, I have a few more questions here, and then we're going to turn it over to Katie, because I don't think any of my other APH colleagues are here tonight, but I have my speech turned off. So, and I want to encourage our participants who are with us as attendees to feel free to type into the chat any questions that you may have.
And by the way, I got here late, so I'm willing to go over past 7 Eastern, if that, another 10 or 15 minutes, if that would be helpful to you.
Yeah, well, we'll see when we get there. And
okay, I'm just saying I'm willing to do that.
Yep,
so
that'd be great. Okay. So now I know at Microsoft they allow people to work virtually. And can you share any anything that you've found beneficial when you are working in person versus remote? Like, any tips for anybody? And
this is a great question.
Maybe maybe something that you didn't think to consider when it came to working remotely, like advice.
Yeah, I think, we all went through COVID, right? And it sort of forced
Oh, we did.
everybody to go work remotely. And I think one of the first things I learned was make sure to bring everything that you need at home from the office. I think that's the, I think that was probably the very first thing. I don't know how many trips I made going back and forth thinking, well, I think I've got everything. So that's probably the biggest thing. But honestly, if you can access your network, and as long as your IT department allows you to have full access to all your resources, whether you're working within the building or you're working remotely, from a blindness perspective and from that aspect, boy, it's been revolutionary for people to work at home. It's a lot easier. You know where your refrigerator is. You know you know where your
You're not going
office
to take
is.
somebody else's lunch by
You're
accident.
not going to take somebody's lunch, right? There's all these different caveats of you don't have to drive back and forth to work.
Yeah.
You're going to save time doing that. Again, it all comes down to, can I access all the resources I need? And then it also comes down to, well, can I talk to all the people I need to talk to and be able to collaborate well together? And one of the things that we found here at Microsoft was, we believe in striving for and really living great accessibility and inclusion in our meetings. And
Mhm.
Working remotely forced everybody to come to the table with a much more elevated mindset around accessibility and inclusion. Because think about it, you could be talking to your colleague and they could be sitting out on their porch, or they could be out in their car, or they could be in a field somewhere. We had people who were on the beach.
Mhm.
Someone in Hawaii was out on the beach, and they were on their laptop, and they and they were connecting through their phone, and they were just listening. And so everyone had to kind of adapt a little bit differently, because we didn't know who was able to see the screen, who was not able to see the screen. They were not able to know whether or not people were looking at PowerPoint slides. So people had to talk to those slides.
Mhm.
It from an accessibility perspective, it was fantastic because it taught people more about accessibility and inclusion. And so I think that was one of the biggest insights and one of the biggest positive impacts to remote work. And that has fostered into even in greater conversations. We already had them here too, but you bring in new people. They were able to learn and adapt really quickly and understand what that means. So I think I saw it as nothing but positive. And in fact, I will be I will be working remotely for Microsoft starting in June in Tucson. So we'll be continuing that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
So changing back to your old home territory
yeah,
and keeping
yeah,
the same work. That's
yeah,
pretty nice.
yeah.
That's pretty nice. Okay, Katie, do you have any questions?
Well, I think it's just, great having Jeff here and sharing your perspectives. And I really find it interesting, the thought of your thoughts about how the remote work really kind of caused your coworkers to, shift their perspectives and allowed it to become, more inclusive.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, we already do lots of training here at Microsoft around this topic, so it wasn't like they weren't aware of it. It just sort of forced it, kind of forced it really, because everyone was living in a different situation. Some people had lower bandwidth, so
right.
they couldn't watch video.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So everyone was in different circumstances, and so it really just raised the bar in the conversation. And you know and it wasn't me doing it either. It was others saying,
Right.
hey, I can't see the screen, and I just sat back and smiled and went,
Yeah.
yes, keep going.
It's kind of nice to be in the one that's not the cheerleader, right?
It's
Like,
not the
hey.
cheerleader, right? It was one of those situations where it's like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And then
Someone else went to bat. Yeah.
yes, and then you know, at the end of the meeting, I would then raise my hand and go, hey, you know, this is really great, and here's some additional slides that people might want to look at. Because I mean, we got into things like, you know, making sure that everyone was included, and how do you do that, and you know, how do you make sure that you're speaking directly to content that people can't see, and
Mhm.
and all of those things. So it was really awesome to be able to foster that. And now that we're back in the office, you know, for quite a while now, we're still using, you know, Teams, of course, and other things, and
Mhm.
that work continues. I think there's
Well,
always an opportunity for continuous learning, and that was one great thing about remote work.
yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at was as a follow-up. I know you said you're going to be working remotely, so it sounds like that Microsoft is still embracing that culture. You know, it's some companies, as we've heard or seen in the news, maybe have gone back to more of a traditional, you know, in the office kind of work setting for various
Yep,
reasons.
yep.
But it sounds like Microsoft is still kind of open and embracing that. Well, you know, we can do it.
I
So
think
why not
I,
let people work remotely?
Yeah, I think it's on a team by team basis. I think there's you know, of course, we've built technology to be able to embrace hybrid environments, you know, and so you know, I think it's really great.
We have a question here from one of our colleagues, Lori, that I'll like to start off with, and then we have several coming in chat. So if you're ready, we
Go
can
I'm
ahead.
get
ready.
that
Let's go.
question. All right. Um, so from our colleague, Lee Huffman, part of our team, he's wondering, as a manager of technology, can you offer some tips on managing the frustration that learning new technology and interacting with accessible technology can bring?
Oh yeah. Well,
Lee,
you know,
you always
we're
have the
working at a
best
company
question.
Right.
where yeah, we're working at a company where we constantly see new technology, or for example, not being able to get your Zoom account connected. That's also frustrating. Um, yeah. So I think the biggest thing is to just be cognizant of you know, what environment you're working with. It's not always necessarily going to be a screen reader problem. It could be just a regular technology problem. And again, this is where, you know, team effort is also encouraged. So just having this you know, mindset of, wow, I'm running into a problem, and I'm not able to figure this out for whatever reason. It very well could be either just not understanding how a specific tool functions, or it's an entirely new user interface. So I'm having to explore it and figure it out, and potentially it could be that some situations you may not have a full keyboard access to an application, right? This happens sometimes. So this is where you have to sort of explore. This comes back to, you know, really understanding your assistive technology tools well, so that you can bring them to the table if necessary. And then coming back to just people skills of, hey, I'm not able to figure this out. And instead of, you know, getting really frustrated, take a deep breath, go get your cup of coffee or a drink from the fridge or from wherever, and come back to your office, and if need be, reach out to a colleague or a team member, or use tools like Microsoft Quick Assist, which is a great and free solution for accessing, you know, allowing someone to access your specific device. There's also
Yeah, can you just explain a little more, because people might not know what that is?
yeah, Quick Assist
It's something that I have found people don't know a lot about. So I think
yeah. Quick
if
Assist
you could just
is a
a
sure.
little plug.
Yeah, Quick Assist is a tool that if you go to your start menu and type Quick Assist, then you will come up with a window, and you can so you can ask someone to request access to your device, and they'll give you a code, and you'll type in this code, and then they will then ask to be able to either take full control of your screen or just look at your screen, and you'll have to give them permission. One of the neatest things that we did here at Microsoft recently was we allow for the audio from your device to also be sent over to the other person's computer. So if you have, you know, narrator running or whatever, then they'll hear it on that device as well. So they're able to actually hear exactly what you're experiencing, and they can actually look at your screen, and if you've given them full control, then they can do things on your behalf. You don't have to turn your screen reader off while they're doing those things, so you can make sure that they're doing the things that you want them to do and not doing things you don't want them to do, right? Since they have full control of your device if you allow it for that. And it's a really, really great tool. I think that there's lots of people starting to utilize that, and it's free. Doesn't cost you a penny.
Great.
That's
Okay.
great. I learned something new.
So what? Yeah, I had heard about it a while ago, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But yeah, good description. I liked your description.
Yeah.
And so why don't we turn it over to some questions from the
All right.
attendees?
Sure.
Excellent. So we have a first question here is talking about, can you talk a little bit about what kind of education or degree has helped you get where you are today?
Yeah. Well, let's see. So I have an interesting story from a career perspective. I went to college and then ended up getting married and started working because we needed to be able to support ourselves. And so I'm one of these people who went to college and actually never finished. I don't encourage that, by the way. It is a lot harder that way. I can only speak from experience. If you do it the way that I would suggest you do it, although companies are not necessarily relying on degrees these days, this is a pretty substantial change in the industry. They're really more relying on what you know and can you prove what you know, and that's definitely true. Whether you're working at Microsoft or any job, I think that's becoming definitively true across industries. But if you have the opportunity to get an education and including a degree, then definitely do it. In the role that I am in, I would say either a MIS degree, management information systems, or maybe a degree in if you're really good in math, maybe computer science. Although we had people here at Microsoft who were accountants who are now product managers, right? We have people who had got degrees in all kinds of things, and they're not doing anything of the sort of what their degree represents. I think degrees really represent you completing a task, you getting yourself into this upper level of learning mode, and proving that you can do that. That also comes in time in career as well. And so this is a harder one to answer because I think that it varies now based on the industry. But what you need to do is get a degree where you feel that you can be confident in achieving that, and then go where your passions lie. I think that's the biggest thing I can say. Someone once told me that if you're not having fun, then you're not doing the right job. And I think that's really, really true. I delight coming into the office every day because I know I'm making a difference, and I just love that, and that's how I've sort of lived my career and lived my life of, hey, I want to enjoy what I do, and I think that's also extremely important. So is education, but also being happy in what you do is also important.
Yes, that is true.
All right. And thank you everyone for, again, keeping those questions coming. We really appreciate it. We'll get to as many as we can. We may not be able to get to all of them, but let's keep going. So we have a question here. Someone is 19 and wanting to maybe start their career as a software engineer. What would you recommend as a first step? And they are just really grateful for your time this evening.
Sure.
Getting that first step in the
Yeah.
door.
Well, I think the first thing is to really learn your tools. I assume you are blind or low vision, and the first thing, as I said before, learn your tools, learn them well. If you have started to take classes in high school and some basic programming, then that's really good. That's going to at least get you set up for that. It depends on the type of learner that you are. I find that I learn by doing. So I think there are great websites to be able to assist in this process. For example, just getting started, you might want to learn a little bit about the web in reference to programming the web. So HTML, JavaScript, PHP, some Python maybe. There's really great resources on all of those topics out on the web. There's a great tool called w3schools.org that teaches HTML and JavaScript and all kinds of things web related, and that might be a good way to at least getting your feet wet. And then this is where, if you don't have those skills, getting into college, even if you're getting like your associate's degree, which is, by the way, I highly encourage if you're wanting to get started, and there's less risk in that because the classes tend to be smaller, right? Then you might be able to get more individualized attention and tutoring and all of that. Then look at getting into something like that, where you're going to take classes on programming, and you're gonna learn about things like basic programming concepts and that are not specific to specific languages. So I think that's where I probably would start, and look for great mentors. By the way, look for great mentors. I am happy to connect with this person outside of this, if that would be helpful. If someone wants to get me some contact information, I would be happy to talk with them.
Sorry, on that note, we usually say if you're on LinkedIn, if that's a platform where you are, people can reach out to you that way, if that works for you.
I am on LinkedIn. Yeah, you can just
Okay.
search for Jeff Bishop. You can find me there, and happy to engage.
Awesome. All right. So next we are wondering about, you talked about accessibility. We've talked about that a little bit, but are there any parts of your daily tasks as someone as a product manager that you think could be more accessible? Anything you want to share in that space?
Oh boy. Well, I think we can always improve in the area of accessibility, right? I think there's always room for that. And I think, if you've turned the TV on at all lately and watched the news, or been on the internet, or picked up your phone and chatted with friends, this whole area of artificial intelligence has probably come up, right? I'm sure everybody has heard of it in some way, shape, or form. And of course, ChatGPT and the new Bing and all of these things are all the rave right now. And I think this has tremendous opportunity for not just at Microsoft, but as and I'm going to speak as Jeff at the moment, although I think this would be fine to speak as Microsoft too, because we all want everyone to be, able to achieve more, right? But AI is really going to change the world, I think. I think Bill Gates was correct when he said in an interview that AI is as revolutionary as the graphical user interface was. And I think from an empowering perspective for people with disabilities, I think it has even greater impact than that. So I think that's where I'm really excited to see where the industry as a whole is going to take us. And everybody just hold on tight, because things are happening.
Yes, that's the beauty of technology. We have some technology information on our websites, and we're always having to keep that updated. So it changes every day.
Well, look at Be My Eyes. I mean,
yes,
the new Be My Eyes, features that are coming later this year that are taking advantage of this are truly going to revolutionize the way that we interact in the world. So just really wonderful.
All right. So how did you find your job at Microsoft? And can you talk a little bit about how advocacy has helped you find either this job or any of the jobs you've had?
Oh, well, Katie, you know the answer to this one. So I am a board member of the American Council of the Blind, and for full transparency, back quite a number of years ago, I was involved in the process and working with ACB and Microsoft in resolving some of the technical challenges that we saw in Windows 10. And as a part of that process, I got to know the team pretty well, and an opportunity came up, and so I actually flew out to Redmond for the Ability Summit, and while I was there, had an interview, and the rest is history. So yeah, that's how I got my job.
Awesome.
They always say it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. So another question here, asking about, as a you said you're a product manager. How is that different from a project manager?
They're
Or is
really,
it?
yeah, well, projects, I don't know. Some people say they're one and the same. I tend to think they're a little bit different in that when a product manager, we used to be called program managers, and then they changed us from program managers because we weren't really managing, quote, a program necessarily. We were managing products. And so projects, when we're working on software, for example, in this case, Narrator, you can think of the new features that we're working on as a quote project. But really what we're doing is we're working on a product. And so they're probably really one and the same. We tend to try to talk to them about here at Microsoft as products, because it's not just a single project and you get done with it and you move on and you're done with that specific thing and you go do something else. We're driving a roadmap of the future of our screen reader. And so it's really about managing a quote product. It's like managing Windows or managing Office or managing Word, right? It's an ongoing process. It's a cyclical thing, and I think that's that's why we call it product management versus project management.
Great. So can you kind of describe what your work might look like day to day as a product manager?
Sure. It's kind of cyclical because it kind of depends on the time at which we're managing a project. But my day-to-day looks sort of like, come into the office or work from home, and first I tend to manage all the communication that might have gone on overnight. And since we work with teams from around the world, it's amazing how much email you actually end up in your inbox when you get up in the morning. I was commenting on Teams the other day to our team. I was like, wow, I had no email in my inbox when I came in this morning, and 120 messages. So that's the first thing I personally do. And then it's just a matter of managing projects. So that's either writing specifications or requirement documents for specific features. It might be talking to designers or working with engineers as we're focusing on specific products. It might be just handling lots of meetings where we're talking about next steps in the shipping of product. In fact, today we shipped some pretty new features in Windows for Narrator today, actually, in the Windows Insider program, having to do with Excel. And so we've had meetings about that over the last few days. And then it's just about, just managing tasks, managing things that need to be done, managing communication across teams. It's lots of little things. If we're just beginning the cycle, there's a lot of requirements gathering, learning from others for exactly how to build a specific feature. In other words, what do we want a feature to actually look like? Then we sort of dive in and write up really detailed specifications, and then we share those out, and then we hand those off to engineering, and they start working on it, and then we help them with testing. And it's just an ongoing process. And then it rinses and repeats each time we start over on the next thing that we're working on.
Great. And do you manage any other additional products aside from
Other than
narrator?
narrator?
Yes.
My main emphasis is on narrator, although I work with our teams across Microsoft. So at times I will help with other conversations and help in accessibility reviews and things like that. But no, my main responsibility is narrator.
Right. So kind of sticking to that vein of narrator, can you talk a little bit about where narrator was a couple of years ago? It's kind of past, present, and future in the sense of just, you know, some of the improvements that have happened and kind of maybe a little bit
Sure.
about where it's going.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So, you know, back in the Windows 95 days, we did have narrator, and it was pretty basic then, right? When I came to Microsoft in 2017, a lot of work had been done to enhance it quite a bit, and adding things like Braille and scan mode to be able to browse the web a lot easier. One of the first tasks that I was given when I came to work at Microsoft in 2017 was to focus in on our keyboarding model. So we redesigned our approach to the way that you interact with our screen reader via the keyboard. And that was the first project that I worked on. So we really took a hybrid approach of, you know, looking at what the industry did in reference to, you know, our keyboard layout and how others have done it. But we also knew that we brought some uniqueness to our screen reader. So we wanted to make sure that we kept that magic there too. And so we aligned our keyboarding model to something that people have really grown to really like. And that was really, really great. And then I worked on some features centered around tables, and then and table layout work. One of the other things I was really proud of was the work that we did in Outlook, where we improved the efficiency of the use of Outlook with narrator. And then last year we released all new natural voices.
Jeff,
US
just
English.
1 second. I'm sorry. Lori, I think we're getting some feedback from your microphone and your speakers being on. Can you try to mute your mic, please, and see if that helps?
How's that?
Well,
Let's see. Yeah, that's better. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, that was a little bit distracting, but I think we're good now. Okay. So we released 3 new US English voices. Oh, we're hearing it again, by the way.
Yeah.
We released 3 new natural US English voices for narrator, and people have really enjoyed those. We've gotten great feedback on those voices. So we were really delighted with that. And then just recently in our Windows Insider builds of Windows, these are, you might consider these, you know, beta versions of Windows. Anybody can enroll in the Windows Insider program. Just this afternoon, or actually this morning, we released a new build of Windows. And in that, we just enhanced narrator even more by making narrator more efficient inside Excel. So we were very excited about that. So, but we're constantly innovating. We're constantly listening to customer feedback and aligning our roadmap based on that feedback, and, you know, based on what customers are telling us. And so this is why I keep coming back to it. It's probably one of the strongest messages that I can convey to all of you, which is, hey, we're listening. We're constantly listening. In fact, one of the biggest activities that I do here at Microsoft is to actually look at all that feedback that comes in from all different kinds of sources, whether it's from all of you as customers, or we get it from internally from our product teams, or from our advisory boards and conferences. We get feedback from all over the place, and that comes into tools that we have here at Microsoft, and we take a look at these and we evaluate all of them and prioritize that work. So it's just really, really great. And that's one of the wonderful things about this job is, knowing that customers are reaching out, expressing feedback, and that we're able to then take a look at that and act on that. So it's been really great. I really enjoy that part of my job.
That is awesome. And it's about 5 till the top of the hour. So we have time for maybe a couple more questions if folks want to put those in the chat. And Lori, I did mute your mic. So Alt A if you need to unmute and say anything because of the feedback. So my colleague Lori's headset died. So that's why she's having to use the
No
computer and
worries.
speakers.
Yeah.
So what so what would you say, Jeff, to people who are the future? You talked a little bit about AI and where that's going, and that's exciting. So looking forward to hearing about that coming up, and Be My Eyes. That's a great product. Is that still part of Microsoft?
No, Be My Eyes is a separate product, actually.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of Seeing AI. I
Oh,
apologize.
Seeing AI. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Seeing AI is still around. I don't work on that. There's another team
Uh-huh.
at Microsoft that does, but that's a great product. And if you have not had a chance to, try that, you really ought to do that. It's available and you can find it in the App Store. And yeah, it's great. Does amazing things.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about Narrator and how it interfaces with Braille displays at the current time?
Yes, absolutely. That's another thing I'm extremely proud of. Earlier this year, we released some updates to our Braille support in Windows. And so we now allow you to very easily switch between first and third party screen readers. So whether you're using Narrator, JAWS, or NVDA, and you connect to your Braille display, then as long as you follow the steps that are outlined in our Narrator user guide, then you can seamlessly switch between Narrator, JAWS, and NVDA with your Braille display, and have that work, really, really well. The work we did here was just amazing. It was an example of team effort, because it took a village, really, of people to be able to solve that problem. And I was really delighted to play a role in that. It's definitely, there's no I in this at all. It was all team effort. And we were delighted to be able to solve this problem. It was really, really great. And we got lots of feedback from customers that, hey, I tried Narrator Braille, but then I couldn't use my Braille display with JAWS or NVDA, and so we took that to heart and wanted to, solve that problem, and we did.
Right. And the question I always ask you personally, does the Mantis and Narrator and Bluetooth, does that work yet?
Bluetooth, no, unfortunately.
All right.
Yeah, not yet. It's definitely something that's, again,
Got a yet on that.
Not yet.
it's on the, it's definitely something that we're aware of. And
It's on the bench.
I cannot talk about anything that has not been released,
Sure.
but I can tell you that we are definitely aware of the feedback, and just like all feedback, it's prioritized and looked at.
Of course.
I can't guarantee commitments on timing and all of those things.
No.
But I can tell you that that and other related technology, we've heard that from the community, and we're aware of it. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't tell us that you still want things. Just because you know that we've heard the feedback, it's also important to continue to elevate the ask. That never hurts to do that. We'll take any feedback in any way, shape, or form that you want to give it to us. It's all helpful. So that's perfectly fine.
And what are some good ways to give feedback if folks are interested
Yeah,
in
you
doing
bet.
that?
Well, there's a few ways. You can contact the Disability Answer Desk. That's at 1-800. Boy, I hate giving out numbers because I'm going to mess it up. But I think it's 1-800-936-5900 if I recall correctly. I think that is correct. It better be. Okay. And you can do that on the phone. So you can pick up the phone or you can do it through Be My Eyes as well. So you can launch that and you can ask for remote assistance from Microsoft, and the disability answer desk will come on your device and help you, and that's another way you could provide feedback. We have this concept of the feedback hub in Windows. So you can press Windows F, hold down the Windows key, press the letter F for feedback, and that will bring up the feedback hub. And you can then fill out, there's a little bit of a form there, and you walk through the process of submitting that feedback. And that comes directly to our team as well. And in fact, that's probably the best way to do it, because that way you're able to provide lots of detail. And if you allow, we also get some diagnostics from your machine that might be pertinent to the issue that you may be reporting. And those actual feedback items actually make it very quickly into our triage system, where we're able to see them relatively easily. Now, the stuff that comes in from the disability answer desk also ends up there too, but Feedback Hub is a much quicker path for you to be able to get at that. Plus, if you know of the exact steps to replicate an issue, or anything like that, and you're a really fast typist, you could probably knock out some feedback to us really fast using the Feedback Hub. It's actually pretty easy to do. There is the MSFT Enable Twitter account, and you could follow that, and you could mention them, and they're able to get feedback to product groups as well. So that's another avenue that you might want to utilize. So those are 2 or 3 different ways that you might want to utilize. I would highly recommend that you use the Feedback Hub. You can also use the disability answer desk, and if you're on Twitter and you have something really quick, Twitter is not necessarily the best way of handling things, just because you're kind of limited in number of characters. But if it's something quick, you could at least let the team know, and they can at least get in touch with the right product team and figure that out. So yeah.
Great.
Well, I would like to. Oh, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I don't get the notification that I'm unmuted. I need Braille display. So I want to thank you, Jeff, for coming this evening. I think this has been a great conversation.